with Dr. Yamina. We are continuing to study Surah Alaq, and this is our 5th session. As usual, you're welcome to join in during the discussion or make your comments at the very end. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina.
Thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So this is Surah Al-Alaq, Surah 96. And so far we reflected on the 5 first ayat. So today, inshallah, it'll be 6 and 7. So if you remember from the beginning, we were told, read in the name of your sustainer who has created. He has created human being out of a clinging cloth. Read for your sustainer, your Rabb is the most generous, the most noble, اقرأ وربك الأكرم, who has taught by means of the pen. He taught human being what he did not know. Now, and then in ayahs 6, 7, and 8, we are told, nay, surely human being transgresses whenever he believes himself to be self-sufficient. Surely unto your Rabb, unto your sustainer is the return. كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى. So we'll, inshallah, reflect on كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى. Surely human being transgresses whenever he believes himself to be self-sufficient. So it's not the first time that we hear this word istaghna, to be self-sufficient, to think that we are self-sufficient. We came across this term in other surahs, for instance in Surah Al-Layl, which is Surah 92. So let's remind ourselves who this insan, this human being is again within this context. He's created from a very humble, clinging cloth. Even as an embryo, it was clinging to the mother through the umbilical cord because it cannot survive otherwise. And even after birth, he's still clingy, so to speak, metaphorically at least, because just think about it, for instance, air. If there were no air around us, we'd need to carry a bottle of oxygen with us. So we may not have a physical, visible umbilical cord, but we're still very dependent on so many things in order to exist, in order to continue being alive, just to be alive. And this weak, this needy being, we are told, was honored with high faculties, with very special faculties that only human beings seem to have. And through these faculties, he is given knowledge and he's taught what he didn't know. And lo and behold, we are told now, after all this, he transgresses. He transgresses his limits. Reminds me of in Surah Yasin, which is Surah 36, in ayah 77, we are told also, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. Subhanallah. So does not human beings see that we create him out of a drop of fluid? And behold, he is a manifest adversary, producing arguments, arguing against us, and forgetting his own creation. He forgets his own creation and starts arguing with God and asking questions, whether he is aware that he's arguing with God or not, but like he is definitely forgetting his creation, his very humble, insignificant origins, and is showing all this arrogance suddenly. In the previous surah, which I referred to last time as well, which is Surah Ateen, the Fig, Surah 95, therefore, we're told, truly we created human being في أحسن تقويم, in the best conformation, in the best of patterns, and thereafter we reduced him to the lowest of the low, أسفل سافلين, except those who believe and do good works. And from this we understand that human beings are created with this very high potential, but they also they have this free will, so they can choose to not act on that potential. And they even can corrupt it, because although they are created in the best of the best, they have this ability to get down to the lowest of the low. And when they do that, when they corrupt it, and the word corrupt is used in other parts in the Quran, when they corrupt that potential because they are misusing it, not using it for the purpose of which it was created, then that constitutes a betrayal, like we're told, a betrayal of the trust, a betrayal of the amana, as we are told in the Quran. So in other words, that reduction to the lowest of the low, asfal safilin, is the consequence and the result of human beings' own doing, own choice, own attitude, and therefore the doing is inner and outer. It starts inside and then it reflects, it manifests itself in the world as action. So in order not to fall into this category, we are told in Surah 13, the prescription is آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات, to believe and do good works. And it is not mentioned only in this surah, but this formula is repeated a lot in the Quran. Now, it seems like the majority of people do believe, but we've learned so far from various surahs that we studied together that actually most people think that they believe, but basically what they understand by that is really that they don't deny. And we saw how not denying is good at the beginning, it's a first step, but it's certainly not Iman. That's not Iman, that's just being at the threshold of the door that opens to Iman. And that's why in the Quran we are told, for instance, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. In Surah Yusuf, alayhi salam, which we also studied together, maybe it was the first surah we studied together, it's Surah 12, and by the end in Ayah 106, we're told, and most of them, most people, do not believe in God except that they are in a state of shirk, except that they associate partners to Him. So Iman, to really have Iman, to really believe in God, and not just not to deny His existence, requires knowing the object of belief, right? Cannot believe in something where we don't know who we're believing in. And the test is, of course, who is our object of worship. That's true. Everyone can use that as a test to control where they are in their path. Who do I worship? And the object of worship here is not only what I claim, but what my hopes are. Who do I, how do you say? What my heart is attached to, what my hopes are, the source of my hopes. Who do I seek help from? To whom am I grateful? What is my criteria in living my life? And when we do good works, what is our intention? In whose name are we doing that? Or for whose goal? For what goal are we acting in a certain way? Is my hope tied to someone, something, some money, some career, some achievement? I could be not even aware of it, but again, as I always say, that not being aware is not an excuse, because belief requires being aware. That's the whole point. When we are in ghafla, that's where shirk starts crawling, and it's hidden from us, but it does not justify, it does not absolve us from the responsibility. So that's why we need to cultivate that awareness. And the moment we find out we are straying from the path of worshiping God alone, then we need to make istighfar and ask for forgiveness and come back to worshiping Him alone. If we consider the first passage of Surah Al-Baqarah, it starts with Alif Lam Mim, and then we are told this ذلك الكتاب, that book, let there be no doubt about it, it's meant as guidance for all the God conscious who believe in that which is in the unseen, and are constant in prayer and spent on others out of what we provide for them as مما رزقناهم, as sustenance, and who believe in that which has been sent on you as well as that which has been sent before you. It is they who are certain of the life to come. It is they who follow the guidance from their Rabb, from the sustainer, and it is they who shall attain to a happy state. After this, another group of people are described. As for those who deny the truth, it is all one to them. Whether you warn them or you don't warn them, they won't believe. God has sealed their hearts and their hearing, and over their eyes is a veil, and awesome suffering awaits them. Then a third group comes, and the third group is, and there are people who say, we do believe in God and the last day. آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين. While they are not believers, they would deceive God and those who have believed, the while they deceive only themselves, though they are unaware. يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. So they don't even know they are deceiving themselves. In their hearts is a sickness, a disease, and so God lets their disease increase and grievous suffering awaits them because of their persistent lying. And when they are told, do not spread corruption on earth, they answer, we are but improving things. So because they are unaware, maybe they truly think they are. But like, as we are told in the Quran somewhere else, deep down, everyone knows what he is up to. But the whole thing is, most of the time, most people are not in touch with that deep down. They're not in touch with their true self. We live at mostly at the level of the ego, not at the level of the soul. When we live from the soul, then we are in touch with who we are. And then the possibility of being aware of our Rabb, knowing who our Rabb is open to us. Because if we are not even in touch with who we are, then we are not truly we know deep down, but we are not truly making peace with the reality. We are not acknowledging the reality that we are not self-sufficient, that we are totally dependent on our Rabbs sustaining us here and now. And so there is more, it goes on describing the state of being, this state of being. And then in Ayah 21, we are told, all people, worship your sustainer. So these are three ways of being. Anyone can be in any one of these ways of being in the world. And there we are told, O people, يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Worship your sustainer who has created you and those who lived before you, so that you may remain conscious of him. So in Ayah 21, we understand that once we learn who our Rabb is, then we need to strive to worship him alone. It says, worship your Rabb, so that you may be لعلكم تتقون. So taqwa is going to be the result of that striving to worship God alone, not worshiping anything else, which we tend to do when we are not aware, of course, because people don't decide I'm going to worship other things than God. And when we fail to worship God alone, then we need to ask him for forgiveness. In order to do that, we need to be aware that we failed, because if I live in ghafla, in the darkness of heedlessness and mindlessness, most of the time, I won't be even aware that I am not worshiping God alone. I will believe my own claim, my own deception. Just because I claim that I worship God alone doesn't mean that I'm doing it, because I may not even know God. And even if I know and learned it once and I know he's my Rabb, do I accept that reality? Am I surrendering to that reality? That is the beginning of worship. So worshiping God is something that starts inside first, and then it's going to translate into action. And so is amal salih. So worshiping God, ibadah, is worshiping our God as our Rabb. So is someone...
Just a second, Yamina. You mentioned there are three ways of being, and we have a choice to be any one of those three ways. Could you go through them again? Just mention what are the three ways?
The three ways?
The worshipper.
The first
and what
one,
else? The other two?
The first one are the muttaqeen, those who are constant in prayer. Those who are first, they have, they yu'minuna bil ghaib. First, they have belief in ghaib, in the unseen. And then they are constant in prayer. And they spend on others, but not from, they are aware that what they're spending is not from them, but from what has been provided to them, which is important. And they believe in what's been sent upon the Prophet and what's been sent before. And they have yaqeen, they have certainty of the life to come, of akhirah. And the second one are those who straight deny the truth. And the third group is those who claim to believe in God and the last day, but actually they are not truly believers. So the first one and the second one are clear. One is truly a believer, consistently, and the second one has nothing to do with it. He's clear rejecting the truth and denying it. And there is the third group, which is more, how do you say, not as clear. Is it okay? Anything else in the question?
No, thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the third group is what I am focusing on because there is this the claim and maybe even the belief that I believe in God in the last day, but we are told they are only deceiving themselves, although they are not even aware of it. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. So how do we make sure we are not in this group? We have to be aware. So, and we cannot believe in God while being unaware. Because in order to believe in God, we have to know who He is as our Rabb. That's why in ayah 21, it says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ. Because when we say God, Allah, it is, everyone has something in their mind. But he said, this God has to be your Rabb. Is He your Rabb, or do I believe that I believe in God somewhere in the heavens, but my Rabb is, or I have lots of small Rabbs, all the things that I imagine I need for my life. The Rabb is the one that the source of care, the source of anything that helps me stay in life and thrive. So according to my perception, it could be if God is my Rabb, then I am in the first group. But if God has nothing to do, or very minimal has a very minimal connection with my life right now, then it means, whether I realize it or not, I have other Rabbs. That's why I have to make sure who my Rabb is. Who is my Rabb? That's why we are told the angel of death will ask, the first question is, Man Rabbuk? Who is your Rabb? Because who is my Rabb is what matters. We worship our Rabb. Whether I claim I believe in God or not, whoever is my Rabb, my worship, we are created in a way that our heart will feel gratitude to whatever we believe is the source of goodness for us. Whoever is the benefactor, our gratitude will go there. So if I think that some things in this world are the source of, they are helping me, they are the source of my well-being, then however much I claim I believe in God and I worship God and Alhamdulillah, I may say Alhamdulillah, my hamd, my gratitude in my heart, the feeling will go to whatever I believe is the source of that well-being, because the source of the well-being is the true Rabb. So worshipping God is part of Amal Salih, of course. And so, because this Amal Salih starts inside first. And inside, in this case, who is my Rabb? In order to know who is my Rabb, I have to know who I am as Abd. But if I never face the reality, my reality of being Abd, if I just suppress it or ignore it, run away from it, then I will never know who my Rabb is, my true Rabb is. And so I'll end up worshipping other things. And that's why here it's very important that Amal Salih is, there is a condition for whatever we do to be good deeds is Iman. And it is a formula that is repeated in the Quran a lot, آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. It means Iman has to precede. And we are not asked to belief blindly. Each time in the Quran, each time we're asked to believe in our Rabb, even if it had been mentioned earlier, again, even if it is briefly, we are again reminded who this Rabb is. So in Ayah 21, we are told, "O people, worship your Rabb who has created you, so that you may remain conscious of him." And in Ayah 22, immediately after that, we are told who this Rabb is, who has made the earth a resting place for you and the sky a canopy, and has sent down water from the sky and thereby brought forth fruits for your rizq, for your sustenance. Do not then say فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا. Do not then make any rivals to God. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, when you know. I mean, because when we stop and think, how can anything else be a small God when they themselves are being made, when they themselves need to be sustained? So we don't do it because we don't know. We do it because of our unawareness, because of our mindlessness, because we do not ask questions. We just suppress the reality, the truth. Why? Underneath it is because أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. Because we have this false claim, this delusion of being self-sufficient. And anything that threatens the truth of this claim, we ignore it somehow. So we are told, surely human being transgresses. Kalla here, it means certainly, for sure, there is no doubt. And the transgress here, yatgha, which is from Tughyan, tagha, yatgha, Tughyan, it means that there's a connotation of rebellion and defiance, but literally it means exceeding the limits, breaking the limits, like, and it has this meaning of, although someone knows the limit, yet he still breaks them. And it's not a positive, it's definitely a word with a negative connotation. It's not used only for human beings, it's used once, I think, for water in the Quran. Water, when it floods, it also exceeds the limits set for it. And when it floods, it causes harm. So how is this ayah that human being transgresses related to what came before? First, as I had mentioned, the Creator is so merciful. He creates this being from a drop of fluid and honor it with this amazing ability to learn, acquire knowledge. And we talked a lot about the how amazing this ability is to acquire knowledge. Yet he defies his Rabb and he transgresses the set boundaries. And when does he do this? When he does not read Bismillah, Bismi Rabbihi alladhi khalaq, let's say. We were told, read in the name of your Rabb who has created. When we don't do that, then we are prone, or it's possible, the possibility of transgressing becomes higher and higher. Actually, surely it says it's not even higher, but it's like surely we transgress. Why? Because while we are not reading in the name of our Rabb, we are reading anyways. Like the reading is something that we are created with. We are always interpreting events. Either we interpret the events as they truly are, and that is only possible when the creator of the events reveals their true purpose and meaning to us, or we assume meanings, we give them meanings, and we make our own stories about them. So there is no, it's not like there is a neutral way of being. We are always giving meaning to life, to ourselves, to things. Either that will conform with the reality or not. And that's why we are told here that surely human being transgresses. And so this is the first one. And the second is, so when he transgresses. And the second is when he doesn't read in the name of his Rabb. So when he does this, what he's doing, he's claiming ownership of his life, because there is no neutral position between the two. Either we are aware that we have a Rabb and that we owe our life to him here and now. Not only he created us when we were born, like most people will, most believer who are not, how do you say, conscious believers, it seems, it feels, but it feels because of the lack of reflection, because of the lack of finding out the truth, because of that superficial perception of the world. It seems like we were born one day in the beginning, and then now life is mine, as if. So that life is mine is a claim to ownership of one's life, and therefore the reading is going to be done accordingly. If I am independent, if I don't live in connection, being aware of that, my dependence of my Rabb, of course I'm going to project that understanding onto the world, and I will read them not as his ayat, not as his creation, but as things around me. And so as far as I'm concerned, as far as the person is concerned, instead of seeing his achievements, for instance, for what they are, blessings and gifts from God, he perceives them as his own property. That achievement can be something very minor or very major. It doesn't matter. It's the attitude that we are discussing. So the whole thing is that he perceives them as his own property, his own gain. Sometimes it's not even something that we work for, something you were born with, and we feel proud instead of being humble and grateful. People feel proud about it. That's because underneath that pride is ownership. And therefore, instead of being humble, actually, the more we are graced and blessed, the more humble and grateful we need to be. But often people become more arrogant in either in outward ways or in hidden ways. And that arrogance is ignorance. And it is ignorance of the truth, because that person is not reading the truth, is not aware of the reality of things. And this reminds me of, I will share a passage, because this treatise, this passage in the tafsir of Imam Nursi, Risalat al-Nur, is a passage that I really, really love. It's something that one of the first passages I read about him from his work, and it's very powerful, but I'm only going to share a small passage. So in this passage, in this treatise, actually, he is talking about the amana that was offered to the mountains and everything, and the earth and the mountains, and they all didn't want to accept it because it was too big of a responsibility. But human being accepted it, and we are told in the ayah that he was إنه كان جهولا ظلومة, very ignorant and very transgressful, very, how do you say ظلوم? The one, wrongdoer, let's say. So he says there are two aspects. So the first, so the self, when I say I, that self that I, how do you say, I identify with, he's not, so the two aspects is the beginning. And according to whatever aspect I will choose, it means two aspects, two choices, two potential. In each potential, there is going to be a journey. And so it's either a journey towards أحسن التقويم, the best of the best, or a journey downwards towards the lowest of the low. So these two, he says, one aspect looks towards good and existence. With this aspect, it's only capable of receiving favor. It means the person in this attitude is aware that he's only a receiver of favor. It accepts what is given. It cannot create. It doesn't mean that this person is not doing things, but whatever it's doing, the person is aware that it is being done unto him. That doing, even let's say you were an artist, you draw something beautiful newly, or you're a scientist, you find something new. In this attitude, the person is aware that that is a gift. He is not the source. So that's why he says it does not have the ability to create. Its other aspects look towards evil and goes to non-existence. That aspect is active. The person imagine itself to be active. It has the power to act. And the real nature of the I, but in fact, so we have these two potential, but the true nature of the self of the I is indicative. It's not there to show itself, but it shows the meaning of things other than itself. Its rububiyyah is imaginary because we have a kind of mini rububiyyah. We take care of things. That's how we can understand what rububiyyah is. However, that rububiyyah is not real in the sense that we are not the source of it. It's not from us. It is only a reflection of his rububiyyah. Its existence is so weak, so insubstantial, that in itself it cannot bear or support anything at all. Rather, it is a scale. So what is this rububiyyah that we have? We have also a sense of ownership. So we can use that ownership as I own things and I own myself and I own my life. Or I can use it as, he says, it is a sort of scale or measure, like a thermometer or a barometer. A thermometer indicates, he says, the degrees and amount of things. It indicates heat, temperature, but temperature, how many degrees the temperature of this room is not the same as heat itself. It's not the source of heat. So our rububiyyah, our ownership, our knowledge, our knowing are all, he says, they are like a thermometer. They only show the amount of something else. It is a measure, he says, that makes known the absolute, all-encompassing and limitless attributes of the necessary being, i.e. al-asma al-husna. So the qualities that are given to us are given to us to measure, to understand, to detect the asma al-husna. That is what we talked about last week when the ayah says that what makes human beings so special is that we've been given this ruh, and through it we've been taught the names. How are we taught the names? Because I have a sense of ownership, and through it I understand that this world has an owner, because I say this house is mine, the world has an owner, and then I go back and I have an owner, and my ownership is not true ownership. And so he is the only owner. So it goes in stages, but that's how it works. Thus, again, I'm going back to the quote Imam Nursi is saying, thus he who knows his own self in this way as a unit of measurement and realizes and acts according to it is included in the good news of truly he succeeds who purifies it. قد أفلح من زكاها من زكى نفسه, whoever purifies his self. He truly carries out the trust, the amana, and through the telescope of his eye, he sees what the universe is and what duties it is performing as ayat. When he obtains information, when the person in this, meaning in the ayah, it was the first group, al-muttaqeen. When he obtains information about the universe, he sees that his eyes confirms it. This knowledge will remain as nur, as light and wisdom, hikmah for him, and it will not be transformed into darkness and futility, because the light, the knowledge that he's receiving from the information he obtains about the universe is obtained through the eye that is the unit of measurement. So just like if I see ownership outside, I say, Ya Malik. If I see beauty outside, I immediately understand, Ya Jamil, you are the source of all beauty. So this information becomes knowledge, it becomes wisdom, it becomes light. When the eye fulfills his duty in this way, it lets go of its imaginary rububiyyah, lordship and ownership and supposed ownership, which are the units of measurement. And it says, to him belong the sovereignty, and to him is due all praise, and to him belongs the judgment, and to him will you all be brought back. And this way it achieves true ibadah, true worship. It attains the rank of ahsan taqweem, the most excellent of patterns. But if forgetting the wisdom of its creation and abandoning the duty of its nature, the eye views itself solely in the light of its apparent meaning, it means now it does not recognize that it is a unit of measurement. If it believes that it owns itself, then it betrays the trust. And it comes under the category of, and he fails who corrupts it. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. So you see there is a corruption. When we imagine that we own ourselves, that we are, this is it, this is my life, my thing. We don't even think about it. By default, when we are not abd, when we are not owned by our Rabb, by default, it seems like I am independent. Somehow, it belongs to me. I think about something, I say, if someone has, let's say is gifted, writes a beautiful poem or something, so I am so gifted. And when people say gifted, they don't mean a gift from God. They mean I am so good at it. It's my gift. SubhanAllah, even the words lose their meaning because of the attitude. So what does he say? And then he says, it was of this aspect of the trust, the corruption of the trust, therefore, which gives rise to shirk, to evil, and to misguidance, that the heavens, the earth, and the mountains were terrified. They were frightened of shirk, of committing shirk with God. But human being, like it's something so frightening. Luqman alayhi salam, he says to his son, إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. Shirk is associating partners with God is a very big transgression. Yet we do it so easily because of our we don't take things seriously. We are not aware of the enormity of what we're doing, what we are perpetrating. But here, so indeed, I'm back to the text. Indeed, if the I is not known for what it is, i.e. an insubstantial alif, he's saying alif because in Arabic I is ana, af'alu, aqra'u. The there is the alif, the letter alif, and it means the I. So he's saying the I is insubstantial. It is a hypothetical line. It may, if we remain unaware of this, if it is not known as it is, then he says it may burgeon in concealment under the ground of ghafla, gradually swelling. It will permeate all parts of a human being, and like a gigantic monster, it will swallow up the human being, so that that entire person with all his faculties will quite simply become pure ego, pure I. Then too, the I-ness of the human race gives strength to the individual I-ness. When we say, how can a human being be so arrogant when he's so weak? He says, no, because he looks at the achievement of all the human race and finds strength from it. So the human race gives strength to the individual I by means of human whatever, and then gaining support from the I of the human race. That I, the individual I, contests the commands of his glorious maker, like Satan. He becomes like Satan. So, who are you? Why did you create me? Why is it like this? As if he knows, he understood, he figures it out. Instead, even if you have questions, nothing wrong with having questions, but then ask the questions properly. When I say, why did you create human being like this? Or why should I do this? I'm already, it's not really a question. I'm already assuming that I know the answer. I know the conditions, and I am now arguing and contesting it means I don't like them. I don't like what's going on. But if I'm truly asking questions, then I ask from my position. My position is, this is who I am, and I want to know what's going on here. And I ask and wait for the answer. So it's not about asking a question, it's about how we ask them, or if we are really asking or just contesting. And the contest here is that it is based on a delusion. So there is no way I can figure out the true answers to my question when I remain in a position that itself is delusional. It means I'm closing my eyes and I'm saying, why is it dark here? Just a second. You can't find out if it's truly light or dark because and I say I refuse to open my eyes. Why should I open my eyes? Subhanallah. Okay. Light. We are created in a way that we are aware of light through our eyes. So if you keep them closed, you can't see them. And the eye here is a metaphor for the heart. Not only the physical and the insight, the inner eye, let's say the inner sight. So then he says, Imam Nursi says, then using itself as a yardstick, this big eye that is compounded through the gaining strength from the whole human race, using itself as a yardstick, it compares everyone, everything with itself, and divides God's sovereignty between them and other causes. And then it falls into shirk on a vast scale, because if I build my house, if I cook my food, if I am the one who think, I'm the one who live, I'm the one who breathes, then surely everyone else is, I project that understanding onto everything else. And so the shirk does not remain only as far as my sphere of action is concerned, but I project it to the whole world. It is just like, so he says, so the man who says, I own myself, must believe and say, everything owns itself. Thus, while in this treacherous position, the I is in absolute ignorance. And ignorance here is important because whenever we are not reading in the name of our Rabb, whatever we conclude, whatever knowledge we have is going to be ignorance. And he explains why it is absolute ignorance. Even, he says, even if it knows thousands of branches of science, it is compounded ignorance, and it is most ignorant. Because when its senses and thoughts yield the light of knowledge of the universe, those lights are extinguished, because such an eye does not find within itself anything with which to confirm and illuminate and perpetuate the light in the creation. So there is light in the creation. The whole creation is making tasbih, and water, for instance, being lifeless and being lifeless and having no knowledge, but it enters all kinds of beings, all the earth, all kinds of plants, and they all grow full of life. This events, I mean, it's not one event, it's like, or this phenomenon is full of light. It is glorifying the giver of life. It is glorifying his knowledge and his power. But when this information, he says, comes to an I that says, that believes I own myself, it becomes, there is nothing in that I that can confirm that light or perpetuate it. So it becomes, so it says, whatever, I'm reading now, whatever it encounters is dyed with the colors that are within that I. Even if it encounters pure wisdom out there, the wisdom takes the form within that I of absolute futility. And we can see, I mean, you see this beautiful things going on in the universe that are so clearly glorifying God, and they tell you evolution. You say, what is evolution? Evolution, whatever. Don't ask me what it is. It means haphazardly, it just happened to be like that. Subhanallah. That's it. It becomes absolute futility. For the color of an eye that is in this condition is atheism and shirk. Some people are not atheists, they believe in God, but only illa wa hum mushrikun. It is denial of God Almighty. In reality, even if it seems like shirk, says, yeah, God created in the beginning, now it's happening because of this and that. In that event, there's no God. If he's not Rabb, or that God is not Rabb, he's not the God who describes himself, who speaks to us in the Quran and describes himself to us in the Quran. So in the text back, he says, if the whole universe is full of shining signs, shining ayat, a dark point in that eye hides them from view as though extinguished. He extinguishes everything. It's like a black point. Whatever light comes, he won't see it. So we saw the three groups. but the three groups actually are two. It seems like three attitudes, but yeah, the outcome is going to be one or the other. It's either recognizing and confirming the activity of Rububiyyah, or either denying it or explaining it with shirki explanations, and still the Rabb is not there. So either the Rabb is present or not present, whatever the different attitudes we think people are taking. That's why it's هَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, it says in the Quran. We guided human being to two paths. He has the ability to choose between these two paths. So imagining oneself to be independent results in ignorance, because the person fails to read the ayat, the signs, and so this person ends up foolishly preferring the life of this world to akhirah. There is an ayah actually where we're told that we are told, sorry, فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا. So as for him who has transgressed, the same word is used, طَغَى, who has transgressed and preferred, and therefore preferred the life of this world. So how do we know the symptom of طغيان is, how do you know someone is طاغي? Because the more they prefer the life of this world to akhirah, the more there is طغيان. There is going beyond the transgressing the limits, the boundaries of our creation, how we are created. And you may think, like, isn't that foolish? How can someone prefer the life of this world to akhirah? Well, something we do all the time. And preferring the life of this world to akhirah means living our life in order, with the goal being this life alone, instead of using this life and the life of this world as a means to confirm akhirah. So the alternative is not sitting at home and doing nothing, or going in a cave and doing nothing, but it's using this world to confirm akhirah, to fulfill one's purpose. And that is possible when we start reading the ayat in the name of our Rabb. Then we will confirm, because they tell us, everything around us tells us about akhirah. So the life of this world, nothing is wrong with it. But when I, in my imagination, in my delusion, disconnected from its origin, from where it's coming, I disconnected from the message it's telling me I came from there and everything is going back there. Because akhirah is not only the end, it's the origin as well. هو الآخر هو الأول والآخر. So if you remember, I had mentioned two steps or two levels of reading the ayat. One is reading in the name of our Rabb, which means testifying how everything is an ayah, proclaiming the divine names of Asma al-Husna, and glorifying their Rabb and praising him. يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِهِ. The second one is a more subtle step. It comes later, once we learn to read, which is realizing that the reading itself is a gift, which means we are made to read. So we don't attribute the reading to ourselves, because then there is still the eye showing its, ownership, owning something. I'm reading the sign, but I'm the one doing the reading. I'm giving charity, but I'm the one giving charity. giving charity in the name of God means not only I give charity as He's told me, but as the muttaqeen in the three group, the first group in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah was they give mimma razaqnahum. So mimma razaqnahum, from what we provided them, is not only the money or the property that they are giving, but the giving itself, the compassion itself, the sense of helping itself, everything is a rizq from Him, is provided from Him. He's the helper, He's the giver. And here, He's the reader. He is the one who teaches us to read, and He is the one who enables us to read. So reading in His name, I had said, has two meanings. I see everything as His signs, talking about Him as His rububiyyah activity, the result of His activity of rububiyyah. Part of it is my own reading. It is also, my own reading is also an ayah to His rububiyyah. So this is a way of purifying the self, tazkiyah, from false claims. It's a journey, of course. It's not going to happen overnight, but as long as we have the intention, inshallah, we'll pray for it. This reminds me of Sheikh Ibn Arabi, who Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah. He says, it's something latifa, something subtle. He says, follow the adab of the Prophet, the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wassalam, who with his hal said, I am not a reader. So he's saying when the Prophet ﷺ was asked by the angel Gabriel alayhi salam, to read the first time, he said, just iqra, read. What did the Prophet ﷺ answer? He said, Lastu biqari'. So Ibn Arabi takes that and he says, this is the adab of the Prophet. Look, he says, لست بقارئ أي ما أنا بقارئ إنما القارئ أنت. I am not the reader because it's you who is the reader. So even when I'm reading, I'm not the reader. MashaAllah. So the ignorance and the arrogance here stem from the delusion of self-sufficiency, the delusion that I own whatever I'm doing. I am the doer. I am the creator. It is a delusion. It is because it's not like we stop and think about it and decide I'm going to believe this way. No, it's because we didn't stop and reflect that we end up into that delusory trap, if we can call it. I don't know, I'm making up. But that causes misery. The ego, when we live from the ego, it feels good because the ego becomes, how do you say, it thrives on it. But that thriving it thrives on an illusion, on a lie. But the heart and the soul are trapped and are like smothered or suffocated with the false claims of the ego, with the ego being trespassing, transgressing its bound, because the ego was not supposed to be in that position. The ego has other functions to do, and those functions are to serve the heart and the soul. And so when it becomes the captain of the boat, it transgresses its boundaries and it, how do you say, it suffocates, let's say, I can't find the better word, the heart and the soul within us. And so it causes misery for the person herself. And of course, misery in this world, here and now, and it destroys the akhirah, the eternal life of the person as well. Anyone had something to say?
Yeah, Dr. Yamina, yes. Shall we pause here for a little bit to see how people in the room feeling, is this resonating The idea that
that would be really good if they can.
Yeah, we have something in us that has two faces to it, and it's receptive and passive, and deeply, dependent, and also it has some sort of imaginary agency, some sort of agency with which it relates to God, and either we take the self and go into playing God, playing Rab in our little world,
mini Rab, but still Rab,
or we take that self as a mirror and a sign pointing to the real Rab. Are these ideas too out there for you, or it's very dense. Of course, we could do a whole months discussing this issue. Dr.
Well, hopefully it will take our life. It is worth being explored. being explored, because it's going to be like it's either we win-win or lose-lose.
Very high stakes.
Yeah.
So
the stake is not only this world and the next.
Yeah. So very high stakes, something profound, and has direct implication to how we feel about ourselves and how we live every day, even if it's a Monday. Whatever. Dr. Yamina provided a trailer. She didn't have the opportunity to delve a lot into it. But given what you have heard, what are you hearing? What is resonating? What is confusing? If you could share a bit, inshallah.
I have a confusion point. And that point, you mentioned it early on, Yamina, and I was going to ask you at the end about it, which is the relationship between the self and the ruh, the heart that knows, and the self. The self needs to be, needs to help the ruh in its mission to connect to God. But when it takes over, when it takes over, things get confused and the ruh gets smothered. So the relationship between the self and the ruh, for me, I always thought that the self, when you become like a nafs al-mutma'inna, then that's a state of ruh. Anyway, I think my confusion is nafs and ruh, but that's a big confusion. So maybe no one else is confused but me.
Yeah. It's always the self, but let's call it, I said ego, because the self is going on a journey. Inshallah, we hope it's going on a journey. It starts with identifying with the ego. Or you can, if you want, you can call it a nafs al-ammara. It doesn't matter. And then, but the ruh is always there. The qalb, the heart is always there, right? However, it's a journey of consciousness, being conscious of who we are and identifying with it. So when we identify with the ego, it does not mean that we don't have a ruh. It's just that we are not conscious enough to identify ourselves with it. Is the ego our true identity? No, that's why it's a delusion. And that's why it brings misery. That's why we never feel fulfilled. And it's good that we don't feel fulfilled, because then it makes us, this will urge us to look for peace, for meaning, and then the more we go on this journey to the end, at the end we will, as you said, yes, al-nafs al-mutma'inna knows who it is. So it's identifying with the ruh. And so the ego is still there, but it's fulfilling its function as well. It's not taking the the seat of the ruh, for instance, or the heart. Because I don't want to dive into this, because it's not only deep, but a little bit complex, and the different terms can be understood in different ways. But just, I was going to give an example of, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, or if it's going to compound.
But for now, at least for now, like the way, like, you know, that I'm understanding is that at the stage of a nafs al-amara, and then the stage of the nafs al-lawama, we're sort of close. But once we get to a nafs al-mutmainna, then this is where a nafs supports the ruh. So the ruh is
it's not, the nafs is, I don't want to say it like this, but it's not, they are not all different things. The nafs here, the self here is he doesn't even say the self. Like Imam Nursi says the I. When I'm saying I, what am I identifying with? This I-ness is, this I is going to identify with different things within me as I become more and more conscious. And this consciousness is not, I'm not talking about the consciousness that we learn we hear out there. It's a consciousness of ihsan. It's a consciousness of being abd. And the more I become aware of my ubudiyah, my being abd, the more I will know my Rabb and worship him alone. The worship will start inside as recognizing him, as being grateful to him. The heart will start the heart will start doing the reasoning, and the aql, the intellect, will become a function of the heart, as we are told in the Quran. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. Those who are at the level of the nafs al-ammara, they have hearts, but they don't make aql. Why? Does it mean that they don't reason? They reason, but when we reason, we take our premises from somewhere. The reasoning takes premises, and then we reason with them. Pretty much everyone will reason somehow. We learn it a lot, and we can reason properly. But what we often don't do is question our premises. And the premises that we don't question when we are at the level of identifying with the ego are the premises of the ego, of nafs al-amara. They are unquestioned beliefs. Once we accept them as true, we start reasoning with them. The heart, when we come to the level of the heart, we start questioning. The heart questions. It says, "La uhibbul afilin." I don't like which is not, which is transient. At the level of when we are, our consciousness is much lower, we don't say "La uhibbul afilin," although the heart still doesn't like it. What we do? We swipe it under the rug. We avoid the reality that everything is transient. And that's it. We don't reason with it. We don't look for an answer to it. We don't ask why things are transient. Only if someone dies or something, there is a big crisis, then we are in shock. We call it trauma, and we deal with it with different ways. And that's it. So I'm just trying to say that this is a journey of consciousness. It is the same me, but at different levels of consciousness, I identify with different things within me, or those things could be totally, how do you say, delusional, because when I say I and I identify with the ego, there is no such a thing. The ego its premises about who I am are totally wrong.
Dr. Yamina, also, I think the confusion is this, because you were using it in terms of self, or ego, like even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls himself nafs into 3 places in the Quran, like itself, like an individual, like an entity. So you were using it in terms of self, right? Like an ego or...
No, actually, when I shared the passage from Imam Nursi, he does not say nafs, he does not say self. He says the I. When I say I, what level are you? Yeah.
So that's the ego.
Yeah, and it could be negative, it could be positive. It depends what you do with it.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing I had a question, I do not agree with Ibn Arabi on the fact that you just, the Prophet's situation was different because he could literally not read.
No, but he doesn't mean that. He doesn't mean that. He's taking that and saying that even when he said that, it's like a latifa. How do you say something?
Yeah, subtle, very subtle.
No, but he's not denying what you're saying. He knows that in that situation, the Prophet really didn't know. But he's saying, even when we learn to read in the name of God from the example of the Prophet, let's follow his hal. He doesn't say he said. He says his hal. Like even there is adab in his way of being. So he says, let's imitate that hal. So when you do the reading, so he's talking about us now. Let's say, lestu biqari. Let's say I'm not a reader in the sense that, but he explains, it doesn't mean I'm not a reader, I'm not going to read. Do the reading and know that he alone is the reader.
He's the teacher.
Yes,
so
he's the teacher.
It's a command to read, so I'm going to read, but in his name, that only he can teach. He's the one who's teaching me.
Yeah, but the teaching me here is like, good. So teaching me here, this word, I can understand it in different ways. I'm going to only analyze 2 ways. One, I can say he's teaching me. Now I learned, I am doing the reading. Like he created me. When I was born, he created me. Now, as if now I am living on my own. So the teaching there, let's take it as he is always the teacher.
Right.
Just because I learned yesterday, forget about reading. I could lose my consciousness. I could lose, not my life, but let's say I was reading very well, and then next day I lose my memory. I don't know who I am even. So you see, I'm trying to show that it's not like he teaches us and then a new phase starts. I am the reader. No, the 2 things are happening all the time at the same time, simultaneously. Right?
Yes. Even having knowledge can make you arrogant, that
Exactly.
So that must be the point.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that.
Exactly.
Anyone else who wants to share anything? Especially what Dr. Yamina shared earlier about the self, the I.
Maybe it's easy to share like personal struggles with the I, because we all fall into the I. We all fall into even if I'm doing good, like, you get to a point where you might be complaining, it's always me doing the right thing, no one else does it but me, always me. I'm, so when you say this, like, it is like, you're not saying, oh, alhamdulillah, I've been chosen again. I'm so lucky that I'm always chosen to do this. So that's one way of looking at things. And then the other way is like, when you reach a point, it's like, oh, it's like always me, no one else does this but me, I get burnt out, so I don't know. I think I could see these two sides, where someone is complaining about doing good and someone is so thankful that they've always been chosen to do good. So that comes to my mind as an example of both sides, and in both times you're doing good,
It's a good example, because the assumption, when I say, why is it always me? The assumption is, I am the doer, I am the creator, I am the source of the doing, which is something that I need to pause and ask myself again, is it true? Or is it an opportunity? I could very well decide to do whatever I wanted. Let's say I clean, it's me cleaning. If I got sick, I could not clean it, however much I wanted it. Now, there is another thing, but it's not related to our subject, but related to the question or the comment. It could be that the person has a point there. For instance, let's say I'm sharing the house with two friends. We decided that we will in turn clean the house. For some reason, each time something happens and I find myself doing it. So from one point of view, yes, once I choose to do it, I need to be clear that I want to do it, and then don't complain about it, because it's, as it was just mentioned, it is an opportunity to remember that I was given the time, the health, the opportunity to do it. However, it could be something in me saying, why always me? That is not related to the ownership in doing it, but maybe I am not acting wisely. There is no balance. Maybe I should stop and say, what am I doing? Especially, maybe we should just sit down and ask my friends. We need to re-talk, re-decide what's going on, because it could be that I will end up being a doormat. Is not how do you say? Is not the character of the mu'min. There is izzah in the mu'min. So yes, unless the person decides that I knowingly, it's not because I'm a doormat, I don't feel like that, I feel like I am happy to do this. It's my sadaqah, it's my charity. Then that person, if that person is doing that in that spirit, with that consciousness, intentionally, the person won't complain about it. But if we're complaining, it could be that it is the indication to something else going on, and actually, how do you say, encouraging people to exploit another person is not something good, because remember, Imam Ali says justice is two things, and we need that balance of the two to have justice. One is to not, la tadlam, do not commit injustice. But the second one is often something that is the cause of so much injustice, is also, especially among the good people who say, okay, I won't commit injustice, but says, do not be the, la tudlam, how do you say? Do not
allow injustice
to be performed. It could be performed on me. It doesn't matter. Whether it's performed on someone out there or on me, it's the same. I am allowing injustice to be perpetrated. I'm allowing people to act unjustly. So it's not only about me not acting unjustly, but I shouldn't also allow injustice out there, even when it is done unto me. Whether it's done unto me or onto someone else, it's the same. Injustice is going on. So we have to stop both. So it could be that in the example, something else is going on. But yes, it's a good example from the perspective of, it could be that I am owning. There is definitely an element of owning what I'm doing. And then I say, oh, it's always me. So there is a double istighfar to be done there. An istighfar for myself, for owning that, and maybe another istighfar, maybe look around. Is any injustice going on? Inshallah.
Thank you for sharing, Halia, and thank you, Dr. Yamina, for engaging with that in a way that benefits us all.
Shall we stop here? Because I'm looking at the time.
Okay. 9:30.
Yeah.
Anybody else who wants to share? I don't know what to make of silence. It means it was intense. We need time to feel it, or we actually couldn't understand what's going on, or we love it. We have nothing to say. It makes perfect sense. It isn't. The question is not an evaluation question. You know, how they evaluate the idea. It's more like, what is it? What does it mean to you on your end?
You know, Isra, someone sent on the WhatsApp chat a sentence from what Dr. Yamina was saying in a previous lecture. So maybe people could share like one sentence that resonated, or like one takeaway message that they could share.
The point that was being discussed was the togha, right? Transgression. That we might, after...
That the Togyan here,
right.
In these two ayat, we are told that the source of the Togyan is the istighna, is to imagine, to be, to think oneself to be self-sufficient. إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى. Surely human being transgresses, commits Tugyan, whenever he believes himself to be self-sufficient, which is, we are not self-sufficient, of course, so it's a delusion. So this delusion is the source of Tugyan. This is a huge topic, actually, because Tugyan is at the source of all kind of injustices and transgressions and oppression. And it starts with ourselves, but it also out there in the world as well, all kinds of transgressions and oppressions come from here.
Right. And the greatest these days is with the scientists. You know, they think that we have done so much of progressed in technology and science and everything that, you know, they stopped believing in God, and they don't need God anymore. And, you know, they think they are the ones, who have achieved this through their, every time.
Yeah. And they pump the egos of people. Like people say, we, even if you are not the scientist yourself, we found this, we can do this and that.
Yeah, and then they think that, this was the whole universe is just an accident, and we are nothing. We have no place in the universe. So the very conflicting because of this transgression that human beings, and every time they land on some planet or a meteorite or something, they say, we did it.
The worst is, because of this, there is no sense of accountability. Otherwise, how can human being go and research how to make more and more harmful weapons of mass destruction? Subhanallah, la ilaha illallah. Why would you research something like? Why would you produce something like that? For power, for well, of course, because
ego.
Because we deep down we know we are weak, so we are looking for power outside, because we claim to be self-sufficient, but deep down we know we are not.
A lot of young kids, and especially college-going kids here in States, the atheism is increasing on the rise, and especially as the science and technology, progresses, and people are just
we don't know if it's progressing or not. Actually, I don't know if that's called progress, because it's becoming more and more destructive. Even I don't know, look at the food industry, where it's more and more difficult to find real good wholesome foods. La ilaha illallah.
Yeah, that's another, like in Surah Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we're going to change the whole world, the
corruption,
ecosystem and all that.
Yeah.
But as Dr. Yamina, one more point, I think two classes before I just forgot to mention that, the physicists, they know that how finely tuned the universe is to the 0, I don't know how many 0 points, the coefficients, you know better, all these things. They are so fine that if there is a little change, the universe would have not existed. And still they don't connect the dots.
Actually, there are more believers among the physicists than, for instance, among biologists and medical doctors, but not all of them believe in a personal God. They believe in some power. But definitely there are more believers among the physicists because of this. Because in physics it's easier to see the whole image, but when you go in other sciences, like in biology or something, it's easier to get lost into small part, and so to lose the connection with the rest. Yeah, so it becomes more reductionist.
Yeah, emergence. Everything gets lost in the emergence, the biology and all that. But there are so many physicists, they know, they just say that this is because of the parallel universes. They dismiss those fine-tuning and coefficient.
That parallel universe is only an assumption but you see it's an assumption, but they cling on to it because they say, okay, one of those many universes happened to exist, or we happen to be in there to witness it, but just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. Mainstream physicists, they tend to support fine-tuning.
Yeah.
I agree, Dr. Yamina. Other people agree too, that physicists have a bit more clarity when it comes. Whereas, in biology, somebody can come along and say a few, fancy words, and nobody understands. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like the Kings make it, king has no clothes, but nobody says it. That somehow your organs, everything just came out of mutation, and he can say it like straight face, and people know. Whereas in that becomes mainstream. Of course, there are people who challenge that. Even professors who are tenured and employed, they're minority, but they question that. But for physics, there are more people. More majority agree with fine-tuning.
And lots of people will make jokes about the parallel universes.
The other thing that to tie back to some of the things that Yamina you mentioned, when the eye is in that illusion, then all the lights becomes extinguished. So the person can look around and see so many sophisticated structures in physics or biology, wherever, and then turn around and say it's just random, or it's a big big joke. So that's that ego. The way we
because that's the premise that is unquestioned. There is a belief that is unquestioned, and that's the telescope they look through. Everything is happened randomly, is you can't challenge it. If you challenge it, you will be attacked. I mean, I remember in old days, they will attack you. And they all agree, they don't agree how it happens, but they all agree it's not done purposely.
There's this professor, he's a full professor, an older one, Michael Behe. I looked at his home, he's, I think, in Lehigh University. He's in biology faculty, he's a biochemist, and he has his own theory. He challenges and questions the theory of evolution. And in the faculty website page, under his thing, he explains his research, and then he has a little kind of sentence he adds, my views do not necessarily represent the university's views, or like nobody else. There are evolutionary biologists in that website. They don't say that, but he has to say it.
Because
so that's interesting.
I mean, maybe I mentioned last week this these people, they are scientists, mostly physicists. No, not physicists. Neuro scientists and brain scientists. Some of them brain surgeons, and they were talking about consciousness and things, and they were saying it's like the taboo topic in science. They can't talk about it in academia. And they said it's like in the time of Galileo, what's happening now is much worse than in the time of Galileo.
There's a comment here. Somebody said, I just want to point out that atheism is also brought on by religious leaders that tend to speak for God, not only scientists. That's a good point. And I also want to clarify, even though we keep coming back to science and scientists, really, it isn't the problem with scientists.
No. The scientist is the problem is that with the, how do you say, with the attitude, and because it happens that they're making science, their science reflects their attitude, but it could be anything. Actually, not only science, but look at culture, literature, like the last 2 centuries of atheist, godless literature brought all this new. They have more influence maybe on on our culture than science has. Science becomes like the rational explanation of those.
Not even rational, ideological maybe. And for partial.
No, like people think it's rational. It's like rationalizing what they already feel.
But there are lots of scientists who do the hard work of science, going to lab and painstaking things every day. Many of them, and they don't necessarily even
subscribe to it.
Talk about these ideologies, and many of them believe in God. Among us, there are scientists. I mean, you were trained in physics, but and also there are other people who are currently practicing scientists. So this isn't about scientists per se, but just an idea. And when you were mentioning that to Yamina, that the I, when it's in that illusion of being self-sufficient, it can grow so big that it can swallow up our entire being within Allah, and then it also boasts about the human race. We as human beings. I remember this thinker, a European thinker. I won't name names. His previous century. He actually said this. He said, "Human race made God," and actually, God is us, human beings. He couldn't say, "I am God," because he's going to pass away. But he said, collective human beings, the race, we are God, and our individuals can pass away, but we don't die, and we are amazing, and so on and so forth. Yeah, somebody literally said this, and you study those kind of people in philosophy, religion, and so on. So yeah, and he's not a scientist. He's just somebody who came up with this.
And also, he articulated it clearly, but many people won't articulate it clearly.
Yeah, our ego plays it all the time, and doesn't say it out loud.
So it's not about people out there what they are doing, but it's about recognizing it within us, however small it is, inshallah.
Yeah. Now go back to Sister Alia's suggestion. How about 6 people left already? We are 14 people right now. So how about we share just one sentence takeaway from today, and then we end on that note, inshallah. If that's okay, Dr. Yamina.
Sure, inshallah.
Anyone who wants to share one thing that you're taking from class? Hasn't spoken. Go ahead, Sister Asma, but I would like other people to.
Sure. I just want to, maybe we'll discuss this next time. The mechanism, if you really think, this happens because of heedlessness too. And heedlessness happens because our, I don't know what is the opposite of heedlessness in Arabic, because in Arabic heedlessness is ghafla.
Yeah.
So what is the opposite?
I believe it is ihsan.
No, there's another word. I'll let you know.
You mean
last time.
Okay, yes.
So, when remember there are 3 verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to teach us to recite and then teach us the kitab and, tazkiyah, nafs and all that. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he prayed, he put the tazkiyah in the end. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him and put the tazkiyah first after the recitation of Quran, because the awakening of the heart is the most important. And if that is not happening, then there is always heedlessness and togha and all that, problems, I think.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Last point, yes. Sorry.
Oh no, thank you. Jazakallah khair for contributing. I really don't want to, discourage you at all. I just want to encourage other people to also say something. Anyone? So in that, in that case, then we will just highlight that one of the things we know today is the power of how we see ourselves. That if we see ourselves self-sufficient, we can really build an empty illusion, and really sink in that illusion, and then we even start so-called competing with our own Rabb. And it's painful, but illusion and also being attached to the passing reality as if it's not passing is the root of the problem. And there's a lot at stake that we cannot just leave ourselves in that lost state. Inshallah, we can come back from that. That's one thing I'm taking, inshallah, from today.
Yes, inshallah.
Inshallah. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to those who shared. Inshallah, next time if we can hear more voices, and that will be helpful. And
Jazakallah.
with each other. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina. Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you, everyone.
And may, inshallah, let's pray for each other.
Ameen, inshallah.
Inshallah.